Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Monday afternoon. I hope everybody had a great week. And on the show today, we will get into some Texas basketball, an underwhelming performance at Houston, and another big matchup tonight that feels like a pretty must-win game for Texas. Once again, tonight we'll get into all of that. Other Big 12 basketball action. NCAA women's still doing great. We'll talk about that. NCAA baseball, how about that? Texas wins their first series of the season. We can get into that a little bit as well. We'll get into NBA All-Star Weekend as well. Very much a lot of news about disappointment, a lot of news about the positives. We'll talk more about that as well as we get into the second hour of the show today. We'll also, of course, talk a little about the Cowboys because, when it's not an NFL offseason, if we're not breaking down and talking about the Cowboys nonstop, we'll get into that. And, of course, your text messages, 512-447-3776, 512-447-3776 is the text line number. That is how you can get in touch with us. You guys can ask me questions, I should say. Talk about what you guys want to talk about, what you thought over the weekend. What's your takeaways? We'll get the big fat poll of the day coming up here in a little bit. If you want to talk some Texas basketball or Texas football or anything sports related, you can send that in on the text line because you guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rails, and then we can also tell you that it's a lot more fun when you participate and when you get into it and we can have a conversation. It is always a lot more fun, at least for me. I hope it's more fun for you too. It was a good weekend. Got to watch some All-Star Weekend, some positives, some negatives. I'll get more into that in the 5 o'clock. And my solution or my stab in the dark at trying to make the All-Star game a little bit better. We'll get into that in the 5 o'clock. I enjoyed the UFC fights were pretty good. Saw some fun UFC fights as well this weekend. Got to go out and check out my buddy's new place. Enjoy a good weekend off, enjoying things. I know it's back on a President's Day. Some people are off today, so if you're off, that's awesome. I'm glad for you. If you're off and still tuning in, I really do appreciate it. Tuning in on a Monday. But yeah, it was a good weekend. Would have preferred the day off. Who doesn't love a free Monday off for a holiday that you don't have to do any real work on? President's Day seems like a good holiday. Normally it's like you get the day off, but then like 4th of July, you got to go out and party, which is good. But President's Day is a nice relaxing holiday. You don't got to do it. There's no President's Day thing that you got to go out and like the family doesn't get together for President's Day, do you? I don't know. Is there any traditions for President's Day I'm missing out that you're supposed to do? I don't know what it would be. But yeah, I hope if you get the day off, that's very good. 3-day weekends, I'm a big fan of. Not a fan of Texas' effort against Houston this weekend. They lose to Houston 82-61. Houston is a good basketball team. The number 3 team in the country. They're playing really good basketball right now. And I get people's frustration with this Texas team right now. I went into the weekend. Chan asked me, Chan on the text line asked me at the end of the show, I said they had a 20-25% chance to win because that's what I gave them to actually show up and want to play. And I don't know. I think there were some guys that showed up and really wanted it and really went hard at it. And I think there were guys who thought they were able to not have to do the amount of work that you knew what you were going to have to do. You were hoping that the matchup against Houston that you had here in Austin, you would be able to parlay a little bit of what you realized in the second half against them into making that a better matchup. And it just came down to the fact again, which is as much as I hate to put it on, what it is, the guard play wasn't where the guard play needed to be. And, they were able to go small. You let LJ Cryer go off for 26 points. LJ Cryer has been pretty quiet in the losses. You'll be able to shut him down. Yashid has been a guy who's been going off and doing better, but, they combined. You can't let Cryer go off for 26. You can't let him get hot from behind the arc and go 6 for 9. You can't allow that. And I get there's only 2 guys who want to play defense in the guard position. And that's really what the problem has been in some of these games. Tyrese Hunter has not been the player he needed to be offensively this offseason. He just hasn't been. But when Max Abmas goes 2 for 14 and 1 for 5, Texas doesn't stand a chance in any of these games. For him to play 34 minutes, score 7 points, he's too much of a net negative when he's not scoring because his defense isn't what it needs to be and his rebounding isn't what it needs to be. And unfortunately, that leaves it with what you get in that game where the guards play was just not up to snuff at all. Dylan Disu still played well in the game, 16 points in the game, tried to go hard, 7 rebounds. Didn't have a great game, but tried to go out and play hard. Dylan Mitchell wasn't able to compete at the level he needed to. The physicality, he wasn't able to get it in that game. Kendall Weaver did what he could do, but there's only so much he can do when the rest of the offense is not working. They had to go put in IT Horton, who was going to go out and try and get it. And look, I'll tell you at the end of the day, I'm not, you can't decide everything on plus minus. The plus minus stats, basically the plus minus stats saying that when you were in the game, how were the points affected? So when you were in the game, was the team in a positive mode or negative mode? It doesn't mean everything, because guys who play more minutes will sometimes get logged with plus minus that they didn't really earn. They weren't the problem. They just played a lot of minutes. But if you look at the plus minus for Kendall Weaver and for IT Horton, it's not that bad. Both those guys played more minutes in a plus minus than you saw Dylan Mitchell, who was just really a net negative in the game as well. Didn't have the game he needed to, just didn't feel like he ever really got into it. This is a game, again, I know they're playing tough against Houston, but, you can't only shoot 16 free throws in that game. You have to be able to. If you're Tyrese Hunter, who shot 0 free throws, if you're Max Abmas, who shot 3 free throws, Kendall Weaver at least got 5 free throws, because Kendall Weaver will go to the paint and not care. But if you don't want to be labeled as soft, you can't, as a coach, you can tell people to go inside and go get dirty and get a foul. If they're not willing to go do it, and Max Abmas has trained himself, he is really good at avoiding contact and getting the ball out and creating separation. As a smaller guy, he tries to create separation at the end. But when you create separation, you're also getting away from a foul, and so he doesn't get to the free throw line. Where a guy like Max Abmas, if you look at what those players do in the NBA, it's a James Harden or a Trae Young, who, if their shot's not falling, will still put up 20 points a game because they get to the free throw line. And Max Abmas is not willing to do that, or he's not tried hard enough to do that in these series, only shooting 5 free throws in the game, didn't go out and get what he needed to, 3 free throws in the game, I apologize. 3 free throws, didn't go out and get what he needed to get done. But 2 for 14, 1 for 5 from 3, 2 of 3 from the free throw line. It's just not enough for a guy you need that. And I'm not blaming Max Abmas because he's being the player he is. The issue, I'll blame myself. I'll blame the other people who put, the hopes in the team management that that too many hopes were put on Max Abmas being a next level player, and he's just not at the high D1 level. And he can play a lot. He's a great clutch scorer, one of the best clutch scorers in college basketball, but overall not able to get it done on that side. You turn the ball over 14 times. Tyrese Hunter with 5 turnovers. Max Abmas with 3 turnovers. You can't have that. And I get your ball handler, you're going to have some turnovers, but you can't have, Tyrese Hunter 5 turnovers to 1 assist. That's not good. You can't have that rate. All of those pieces. And it's, you're going up against a Houston team. This is what they do. This is what they go after. So you have to be close on it. You have to work hard on it. You can't allow them 17 offensive rebounds and 14 second chance points. You can't allow them that. And you did. They had 19 points off of turnovers. All of these things. And I can tell you, all day we can talk about coaching and we can talk about preparation, and there's no way that they had a whole week off and this wasn't the main point of emphasis all week long. And they got out on the court and, they didn't want to. And I've known the earlier games for this team, and it's unfortunate, but this is a team that still has a shot in the tournament depending on who their matchups are. But the teams that are going to be more physical, this team, other than Dylan Disu, I won't put him in that bus because I'm not going to put him with everybody else who's not going to be as tough, is too soft for who they're going to be playing against when you go up against teams that want to play more physical, when you go up against a team that doesn't necessarily have the same talent level but can go get those grinders in. They just don't have that. And that's not the way the team was built. That's not what the preparation was going into the season. And unfortunately, you end up with games where you were never in it. This was, decided from the beginning because the effort wasn't there early on. The shot making wasn't there. And when it wasn't, the goal did not become, you can't shoot more threes than free throws. If you can't hit shots, you have to get to the free throw line. And Texas consistently throughout the season has not gone out and guard play. And Tyrese Hunter and Max Abmas have not made a mindset to drive the paint, put your head down, create contact, and go hit the deck hard and make them make the call. Because I know you're protecting yourself. I know what I get it sucks. But, that's what you have to do in these games. They didn't want to do that. You don't want to slow the game down that way. You don't want to take Houston out of it. You don't want to put Houston in foul. Like, all of those pieces, you have to be able to attack the paint and get fouled. The guys are 6'8", 6'9". They're going to play physical. They're great at moving their feet. But if you're able to quickly move and make sudden, quick movements, this is things that guards do all the time. That's why those guards become elite, because their scoring is consistent, because when their scoring lacks on other sides, they get to the free throw line. Texas doesn't get to the free throw line against Houston. And I get the second half, players didn't play as many minutes as they should have because you were just trying to figure out how to hang with this team and putting in different pieces. Caden Shedrick played 18 minutes. Brock Cunningham played 17 to try and get some piece out there. Neither one of their plus minuses were that bad. The starting lineup could not compete with Houston's starting lineup. That's the start and end of it, and I won't put Dylan Disu in it. I know he didn't have a great game either, but he definitely had the best game on the team. I don't want to put him in there because he played. He showed up at least, and the rest of the team didn't as much. Kendall Weaver showed up. He's a sophomore. He's not going to be able to carry this team through it. It was a disappointing game against Houston. I didn't have them winning it. I had them losing, but I wanted to see him put up more of a fight. I didn't want to see it get blown out and them never put up a fight in it. You don't want to lose the second half. When they were letting you come back at the end of the game and you still lost the second half 34-42, that's disappointing. They were somewhat, I think, trying to save themselves, and Rodney Terry trying to save themselves a little bit for today, knowing they were playing again on Monday. We'll get in that game in a second, but a disappointing game for Texas fans on Saturday against Houston. I wasn't expecting them to win. I was expecting them to compete, and I don't feel that the team and a lot of the guys on the team did compete at a high enough level on Saturday to make me believe that team really, really wants to win. And, that goes on to RT in the culture. Sure, that goes on to every single player on the court, that there's not the leader, that, you lost guys that were leaders in Marcus Carr and Timmy Allen that we wanted you to go forward. You lost, a lot of pieces like that. But they're going to need to take change. And I think it's, a piece where if, you're able to keep your recruits and keep going forward, which we have to say that all the time, you hope to keep what you can keep. It's going to look like a different team next year for sure. But I think the team and everybody involved in it, from Chris Ogden, who's now the general manager, to the assistant coach, to Rodney Terry, are all going to learn next year that the build of the team management is going to have to take a change of what you're looking for in that portal and what you're looking for in playing time and recruits and all of that and building a team. Because right now, there's just guys that are not equaling up to the billing of what they should be performing at, what they could do against teams that, can you compete against the best and compete against teams that are lower? And they can compete against teams that are lower, but the best are hurting them. And they still got 3 road games, and you got to win one of them. Now, Kansas is more winnable because they're not going to be as, you can be a little bit softer against Kansas. You can be a little bit softer against Baylor. Like, those are teams where you can go set your own tone a little bit better, at least defensively. But disappointing to see them not be able to show up against Houston. Didn't expect them to win, but expected them to show up. Also around the Big 12 over the weekend, we saw Iowa State get another big win at home. Iowa State climbing up the rankings all the way up to number 6 now. They're 82-74 over the Tech. Keyshawn Gilbert had himself a really good game. But the reality is Iowa State points off of turnovers in this game. They won 28-0. Iowa State was able to take everything that Texas Tech did, create turnovers, get them to make mistakes, and they made them pay for it with 17 more shots, 28 points off of turnovers to 0 from Tech. That gets them the win at home. Iowa State has been one of the most taking advantage of everything anybody does against them teams this season, and they showed that again this weekend. TCU gets a win on the road against K-State, 75-72. K-State, Texas' opponent tonight here in Austin. K-State coming off of a disappointing loss against TCU now. Micah Peavy puts up 26 points, and K-State just shot the ball terribly. 1 for 15 from three-point range for K-State in that game against TCU. Big matchup of number 6 Kansas versus number 6 Kansas at number 25 Oklahoma. Thought Oklahoma might be able to put up a little bit more of a fight. Hunter Dickinson got in there and played tough. He goes for 20 points, 16 rebounds. The 6'9" freshman from Australia, Johnny Furphy, goes for 15 points, 9 rebounds. They out-rebound Oklahoma. Kansas does 40-29. 30-14 wins the points in the paint for Kansas, and they're able to get a big win on the road against Oklahoma. We also saw Cincinnati take on UCF. Cincinnati winning to UCF, gets the win. They out-rebound them. They out-tough them. They get the win 76-74 in a very close game. Interesting to see for Cincinnati. Victor Locken does not play in the game, and that is a big piece for Cincinnati. He's been a big piece, one of their more skilled players, but not tough enough to play the style of basketball Cincinnati wants to play, and did not play, and they are able to get the win without him. And then the big matchup we will see tonight that everybody is looking forward to. We'll talk Texas and Kansas State. That's not the matchup that everybody is waiting to see. Iowa State, number 6 Iowa State at number 2 Houston. Houston is a 9-point favorite in that game tonight, which is surprising. Surprising to see them be a 9-point favorite in that game. But Iowa State there, in the first matchup, they beat Houston at Iowa State. Houston shot 7 for 26 from 3. They make 16 turnovers in that first matchup. There's issues that Iowa State was able to do what they do well against Houston. It's going to flip now that Houston is back at home. But this is a game. It's going to be defensive. Can you get LJ Cryer, who Texas let get off, who hasn't been playing extremely well offensively? Can you slow him back down, get him back off of his game where you're playing that? And I think this is a game that, Iowa State has had trouble winning, games that are shootouts. Then when it gets up to 75-80, that's when they start to have a little bit of trouble to create that amount of offense. They try and hold teams below that. Houston is a team you can hold underneath that. First to 65. That may be the winner of tonight's game. Iowa State, Houston. Looking forward to that one. And Texas has a big matchup. They're 8.5-point favorites in that game. I don't like that number for Texas because they haven't been able to blow a lot of teams out. They blew out West Virginia. But a lot of games have been close. K-State, Jerome Tang's a heck of a coach over there. K-State coming into Austin tonight, taking on Texas. Going to be a great matchup for Texas to try and get back in the right track. This is a K-State team that also is not great. This is going to be a couple questions. Is for Texas, how are you going to be able to dictate the size and pace of the game the way you want? K-State comes out in a smaller lineup. They play like a 6'9", 6'10" center that only plays usually about 10 minutes of a game. They play a guard, 6'1", point guard that only plays about 10 minutes of the game, 10 to 15 minutes. They have some guys that don't play a ton of minutes but start for them. And then they bring in off the second team some of the guys who will play a few more minutes. A couple other guys like Gerald Colbert is the guy who plays about 10 minutes to start off. Will McNair Jr. is going to come in. Those are the guys Dylan Dessou is going to be dealing with. Can he get them in foul trouble? Can he get going? Dylan Dessou's big in this game because they don't necessarily have a guy in the paint who is a stopper, and guys have been able to score in the paint against K-State. Can Dylan Dessou keep that going and stretch out and hit some threes and take advantage of that deal? But you're going to have to figure out, can you get them to go smaller? Because if they go smaller, you're going to be able to play them a little bit better. The problem is some of their better scorers are all a little bit smaller. That means you're going to put Max Abmas on one of those guys. And if Max Abmas is guarding one of their better scorers, it could lead to trouble for Texas down the road just because Max Abmas has not necessarily been the elite defender you need him to be. So when they play a couple guards at 6'1", 6 foot, and then you put in a guy who's about 6'5" to 6'9" into that matchup, it could cause problems for Texas as they're not going to be able to dictate necessarily the defensive matchups that they want. Kendall Weaver having to play against a taller player, that's not something that they're necessarily set up to do. When he gets put against Kaluma, Kaluma's 6'7" to 6'9". That's probably where Kendall Weaver's going to have to put some of his game. If they play big and Dylan Mitchell's going up against someone bigger, maybe Kaluma will be playing the 4, and that's where Dylan Mitchell can go. That's what Texas wants to dictate to play that. But Carter and Perry are two guys that can score, and whoever's got Max Abmas on him, that's going to be what they're going to. Tyrese Hunter's still a good defender, but Max Abmas, we've seen whoever he's guarding has a tendency to kind of get off, and that's going to be a problem for Texas tonight. They have to figure that out. They have to dictate pace, and they have to create turnovers, not make their own, but create some on the other side. K-State's been prone to turn the ball over. If you can create that and turn those into points, you can get away with the win here. 8.5-point favorites. I wouldn't take the bet. I'll tell you that, but I think Texas can get a win tonight. All right, let's also mention Texas women's team did play this weekend as well. They handle business 81-60. They're ranked number 5. I believe they're staying number 5 in the AP poll. But a lot of love going out this week. You're seeing that for Shea Holly, who has one of her better games of the season, at least stats-wise, with a 16-4-6 game. But in reality, I think, that kind of put her a little bit more on people's radar who hadn't been paying attention to what she's been doing since the Rory Harmon injury. But a lot of love has been given to Shea Holly this entire weekend for her just being the glue and being the piece that has kept this team together and going forward in Rory Harmon's injury, just doing everything that is necessary. One of those players that wanted to play for Texas, that came to Texas, where what Rod Baber says, do you play at Texas or do you play for Texas? She plays for Texas, and she's just been a lot of fun to watch because just a dynamic player who doesn't care. Especially when you watch women's basketball and guards in college. I think in the WNBA, you're not going to find too many people who don't want to go down and get dirty. But in college basketball, you may find some that don't necessarily want to go out and play the way she plays basketball. And it's a ton of fun to watch Shea Holly play. So great to see that she is getting some recognition and love after a really good game against Iowa State. They play again on Wednesday. But that Texas women's team is doing some work. One of the top teams in the country, because once you get up in that top 5 rank, those are some really elite special teams. So seeing what they're able to do with that Roy Harmon injury kind of put a damper. Shea Holly has been the piece to keep that going and keep that piece moving forward and keeping Texas women's basketball moving forward. All right. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back, talk about a little NCAA baseball. How about Texas baseball winning the series? Not sweeping, but winning the series against San Diego over the weekend. We'll talk about that, play a little sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rod B, and get to the text line. We come back here. Actually, you know what? We didn't hit the big fat poll of the day either. Let's hit that before we go to break. How about that?
Big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
Sorry, my notes are all out of order. Big fat poll of the day today. Text line's open. 512-447-3776 is the text line. The question for the day, a lot of people complaining about the All-Star game this weekend, complaining about that the competition was not where it needed to be. And I know a lot of people are bringing out and making statements about what they would do to fix the All-Star game. So what we're asking on the text line today is how would you fix the All-Star game? What would you do to try and fix the All-Star game? If you had your druthers, what would you say? I want to get your solutions. I'll tell you mine in the 5 o'clock, but I want to keep getting yours, so we'll get those throughout the day. Anything else we want to talk about, hit us up on the text line, 512-447-3776. We'll get to that when we come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. back on the Sports Complex on a Monday afternoon. Keeping the show rolling right along. Text lines open 512-447-3776. How would you fix the All-Star game for the NBA? A little people disappointed about that game once again this year. It has been an ongoing issue. I'll talk more about my idea in the 5 o'clock, but I'd love to get some of yours before we get to that. We'll get to that. So keep throwing that text in there. Anything else you want to talk about? Texas basketball, Texas football, NFL, any of that. We'll get to all of those texts in just a minute. Do want to mention Texas baseball does go out and win 2 out of 3 over San Diego over the weekend. We saw Jalen Flores hit the grand slam in game 1, take the lead that they don't give back up. LeBaron Johnson goes 5 innings, 2 earned runs in that game. Bullpen looks pretty good in that game. Then on Saturday, that is a game they lost in extra innings. Charlie Hurley gets the start there. Does okay, but throws a couple too many balls out. We also saw that Jared Thomas and Peyton Powell combined for 5 hits in that game. The 1 and 2 hitter in the lineup. The rest of the team combined for 5 hits. They weren't able to get it going in the rest of that lineup. Starting off early, though, those 2 guys looked good. They're going to have to continue to get the rest of that lineup a little bit more flexed out, get them a little bit more comfortable in hitting to get some of those guys home. That became a problem, but they do lose game 2 on Saturday, 5-6 in 11 innings. And then win on Sunday 9-4. Tanner Witt does get to start in that game. Only pitches, gets credit for 1 inning. Does face 4 batters in the second inning. Allows 3 walks, 2 runs come through for him as well. Not the best outing. Not what they wanted to see out of Tanner Witt. Coming back out of the locker room or coming back out of the dugout for that second inning. That's going to be something they're going to have to keep figuring out. They do get out there. They do end up coming back and getting the win 9-4, though, winning that game in game 3. They do take on Houston Christian on Tuesday, so that should be a good matchup against Houston Christian on Tuesday to keep it rolling. San Diego was a pretty good matchup for them to start out the season. One that is not one of the best teams in the country, but a team that has some power and some ability to score. So a good matchup to start off the season. They'll continue to go down. They do play on tomorrow, they play tomorrow, so we'll talk more about them tomorrow and Wednesday, seeing if this Texas team can continue to play and get better and better and better as the season goes on, hoping for big things out of Texas baseball. All right, I do want to play you some sound from this morning. Go behind the burnt orange curtain with Rod Babers and Aaron Hogan on Hook 'em Up. It's a Hook 'em Up replay here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com.
All right, got a couple of mock drafts that I want to look at, and then we'll look at the Sark contract, which is it is a fantastic contract if you're Steve Sarkisian, but it is a big one. It is a huge one, well-deserved. So we'll get into some of the details of Steve Sarkisian's new deal. First, I want to get into some of these mock drafts. So the 33rd NFL team, they call themselves the 33rd team and the Twitterverse. Their NFL website covers the NFL. They came out with their mock draft. Their latest mock draft has Byron Murphy as the first Longhorn off the board at 21, going to the Miami Dolphins. So that is one of the first mock drafts I've seen with Byron Murphy going to the Miami Dolphins. NFL.com had a 3-round mock draft recently. They have Byron Murphy, first Longhorn off the board, going to the Indianapolis Colts at pick 15. Says the Colts missed Grover Stewart when he served a 6-game suspension last season. He's now due to become a free agent, so finding an active, strong interior defender like Murphy meets a major need. So they got Murphy going 15. They actually have the Miami Dolphins taking a Longhorn too. They got a Miami Dolphins taking J.T. Sanders at 21. They say Sanders is an underappreciated prospect right now, but partially because of his lack of targets with the Longhorns, he'll be a strong pro excelling in the Mike McDaniel system as a foil to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So they got J.T. Sanders stock increasing to become a first-round pick. That's huge. Just so you know, for Texans Cowboys fans, in this 3-round mock draft, they got the Texans taking Tyler Guyton, Oklahoma offensive tackle. Cowboys taking Troy Fautanu, the offensive tackle from Washington. So you got the Cowboys taking O-lineman, O-tackle, and they also have the Texans taking an offensive tackle too. All right, getting back to the Longhorns, they got Jonathan Brooks going 39th in the second round. Remember I told you the second round is going to be loaded with Longhorns, and I think it'll be 4 or 5 Longhorns potentially taken in the second round alone. They'll have Jonathan Brooks here 39th overall to the New York Giants in this mock draft, which makes sense. He's still the top running back on the board, no matter which big board you're looking at a ranking. They got Jonathan Brooks as the top running back on the board. Right after Jonathan Brooks at 39, they got A.D. Mitchell going 40th overall to the Washington Commanders. I'm sure he probably wish he went to a better quarterback situation, but hey, Washington may have an upgrade at quarterback, and they got A.D. Mitchell going in the second round here at pick 40 overall. They got the Raiders taking T'Vondre Sweat at 44th overall in this 3-round mock draft for NFL.com, which first time I've seen him being mocked to the Las Vegas Raiders. And just to continue, they got the Cowboys taking Jalen Wright, a running back from Tennessee, in the second round. Just if you're a Cowboys fan and you were interested in what they were doing. Getting back to the Longhorns, they got Xavier Worthy. I don't think Xavier Worthy is going to drop this far, but it is a really deep wide receiver draft, and right now he is seen as probably the 10th or 11th highest rated wide receiver in this class. I think his draft stock will increase, though, and I don't think he'll go this late. But they got him going 60th to the Buffalo Bills. This NFL.com 3-round mock draft, they got him going 60th. That would be pretty late. I think a team will trade up, actually, and go get Xavier Worthy if he starts dropping like that, because he's a punt returner. He'll be one of the fastest receivers in this draft, extremely productive in college. I think some team is going to fall in love with Xavier Worthy on the board there. Getting back to Texans and Cowboys in this 3-round mock draft, they got the Texans taking Cade Stover, the tight end from Ohio State, with 86. Cowboys taking a center from Georgia, Cedric Von Pranger. Prawn Granger. He is the 80. They got him going 87 to the Cowboys at center. So they got the Cowboys taking 2 offensive linemen in the first 3 rounds there. The Ringer had their mock draft recently, their latest mock draft from the Ringer. Benjamin Solak, who does a really good job. He's got Byron Murphy going 17th as the first Longhorn off the board in that draft. Just to go back to the Cowboys, they got the Texans taking Brian Thomas Jr. in this mock draft, just first round mock draft at 23 overall. Cowboys drafting right after that. They got the Cowboys taking Jerzon Newton, the interior defensive lineman for Illinois. He's seen by some. Bucky Brooks had him as the top defensive tackle on the board. I think Byron Murphy actually is going to end up being the top D tackle on the board. I think Byron Murphy actually has better numbers, and I think he has better film than the kid from Illinois, Jerzon Newton, from what I've seen so far. NFL.com also came out with their overall big board, and they ranked top 50, basically Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 prospects, his big board. Not a mock draft, it's a big board. He's just ranking every prospect. He's got Byron Murphy, the 22nd best prospect overall in the draft, A.D. Mitchell, 34th. He's got J.T. Sanders, 41st. He's got Xavier Worthy, 43rd, and he's got T'Vondre Sweat, 48th. So essentially, he's got 5 Longhorns in his top 50 prospects. Remember, I told you that second round for Longhorns is going to be loaded. You may get 4 or 5 picks just in that second round alone for the Longhorns. And also, depending on what happens with Jonathan Brooks, there's some people got him sneaking up potentially in that second round too, because he'll be the top running back on the board. Pro Football Focus have their latest mock draft. They have Byron Murphy, first Longhorn off the board, going to the Raiders. A lot of people think the Raiders do need interior defensive linemen. I've seen both T'Vondre Sweat in the second round and Byron Murphy in the first round mocked to the Raiders, and they have him at going 13th overall. And they do have him as the top D tackle because they got Jerzon Newton going 18th later on to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Raiders once again. They in this same mock draft from Pro Football Focus, they have A.D. Mitchell. Oh, A.D. Mitchell, I'm sure loves this. They got him going 31st overall in this draft here. So 31st overall, that'd be a pretty damn good because that'd be to the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, there's a lot of talk that they may end up trading Brandon Ayuk, but if they don't want to sign Brandon Ayuk to a brand new deal, if that's the case, they'll definitely be looking for wide receiver help in the draft. And don't forget, my man Shano is a wide receiver by trade. So there you go. That's some mock drafts that I've seen. You guys know I'm a mock slut, so I'll give you guys any information on mock drafts. I think it kind of gives you like a random good gauge as to where most of the insiders see these guys being drafted. But until the combine, that's when they'll really solidify the evaluations and data points for these guys. And I think the combine is actually going to help a lot of these Longhorns increase their draft stock. I think Devondre Sweat's draft stock's going to go up. I think Byron Murphy's draft stock's going to go up. Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, J.T. Sanders. I think all those guys' draft stock is actually going to increase. I think they're all going to work out really well.
Agreed. And I don't think it's crazy for the Cowboys to take 2 offensive linemen in their first 3 or 4 picks. I mean,
That's what he got him,
I mean, that's because, the big story that dropped over the weekend, Cowboys related, is Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Actually, it was Clarence Hill of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram who said he talked to Tyron Smith's agent, and his agent confirmed that he's not planning to retire. So, essentially Tyron Smith is saying, I'm going to play. And so if he's going to play, he's either going to play somewhere else, or the Cowboys got to get a new contract for him. And in their current cap situation, can they afford? I mean, Tyron Smith's second team All-Pro last year.
Yes, he was.
At 33 years old. I don't think he's taking a hometown discount. He's looking to get paid one more time. So we'll see. And then they've got their offensive center, Tyler Biotish, who needs a contract.
Yep.
So, they were thin on the offensive line anyhow. Because Terrence Steele had a rough year this year at right tackle, so it really wasn't a strength of their team. And so, it wouldn't be surprising to see them take two offensive linemen, because I think they feel like they can move Tyler Smith back out to left tackle if Tyron Smith moves on.
He's versatile.
And you could draft an interior guard, right? Maybe because at 24, you may end up getting the best interior guard on the board.
And they like to take the best talent available.
And that was like a Zach Martin thing, right? Zach Martin was like 16 or 17?
Yep.
That's where you start getting the best centers and best guards, because the top tackles are off the board.
Well, Tyler Smith played tackle at Tulsa, right?
Yes.
Didn't he play right tackle? And they moved him inside.
Yeah, they projected him as a guard when they drafted him, and the possible heir apparent for Tyron Smith. That was kind of the plan.
Exactly right.
I think it's trending that direction. But now you got to replace the guard, and you may have to replace your center. So those are not sexy picks, but the Cowboys need them. And they don't have a lot of money to hit the open market and be looking for them.
I agree.
They're going to have to upgrade, and the draft is the way to do that. So that's not crazy. And they need a running back too, Rod, if they're not bringing Tony Pollard back.
And I think that same draft had them taking a running back in the second round. So had them taking
that would not shock me at all to see them go O-line, running back, O-line.
That's exactly what they did in that mock draft. So it makes perfect sense to me too. And honestly, Jonathan Brooks could be – they might have a running back that can help them right away though, because Jonathan Brooks may end up sitting a year, kind of a red shirt year in the league with that injury. Okay, before we get done here, Sark's new contract. It is a doozy. Straight cash, homie. Goes from making the extension prior to the extension, he signed $5.8 million he was due to make in year 4, $6 million in year 5, $6.2 million in year 6. Now with the new extension, he has an increase in guaranteed compensation of 78%. He's going to make $10.3 million in his year 4 extension, and he'll make $100,000 more each year. Automatically, it increases $100,000 each year until 2030. Also, lots of perks with this new deal. It makes him the 3rd highest paid coach in college football, trailing only Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney. The perks are great too. He gets 2 dealer cars. He gets a club membership, access to the private jet for 20 hours. He also gets a bonus of $300,000, I think April, when everything becomes official, and he gets access to a lot of tickets. So of course it is perks on top of perks. That's part of being the head coach at the University of Texas. But also for Sark, he bumped and extended his coordinators and most of his assistant coaches. The only coaches who were not bumped and extended, I think everybody got bumped a little bit of extra money, but I believe the coordinators and the other coaches were extended through 2026. But I believe Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon, if I'm not mistaken, from what I saw, their extension only runs through 2024. So I believe that Sark probably wants the opportunity to upgrade there if necessary. If he doesn't see the development that he envisions for that secondary and for their coverage in year 4, remember they devoted a lot of their talent acquisition this cycle to the defensive backfield. Probably was the last phase of roster construction for them since they've been on campus. 5 DBs coming in the recruiting class. You're bringing in Makuba as a 6 DB. You had more losses there via the transfer portal than any other position. So you've completely overhauled now your defensive backfield, on top of infusing a young Derek Williams, a young Malik Muhammad, who should get better next year. Terrence Brooks should be better. You retained Jahdae Barron. He came back, potentially could have went into the NFL draft. Bringing in Makuba. If your secondary is not a strength this upcoming season, I could see Sark potentially looking to upgrade at that position, because Terry Joseph and Blake Gideon have really been recruiting well in the defensive backfield, but now it's about development with that group, and if they don't see the development they want, you could see Sark and PK looking to upgrade. So that's probably why they weren't extended and bumped. But I don't think it's an indictment on the coaches yet. I just think the coaches, Sark wants to give himself a little bit of flexibility just in case they don't see the development in the defense backfield. You think about it, guys, every phase, every level of the defense, offense, and special teams has improved from year 1 to year 3. The only area where you can really criticize and say they have not had marked improvement is in the secondary and in coverage and their reliability this year. You play elite quarterbacks, whether it be a Michael Penix or a Dylan Gabriel, those are your 2 losses last year. You'll probably have 1 or 2 opportunities where you'll play elite quarterbacks next season, and you can't afford for that to always be your vulnerability and be exposed every time you go up against elite QB play. So there you go.
Good stuff there. Going behind the burnt orange curtain with Rob Babers and Aaron Hogan. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will get to the text line, 512-447-3776. Poll of the day today. What is your fix? How would you fix the NBA All-Star Game? Another game that another disappointing performance where there was not really much effort. Tons of scoring, not a lot of effort. How would you fix it? Send that in the text line. Anything else you want to talk about, send it in 512-447-3776. We'll get that when we come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Monday afternoon. Text line's open 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776. We are going to talk a little more All-Star Weekend in the 5 o'clock because there has been some talk about it in the positives and the negatives, a lot of the negatives, but that's a lot of people that just want to be negative, and they're going to talk about that. So we'll get into that. We might talk a little Micah Parsons too, because he was a center of conversation today. We'll get into all of that in the 5 o'clock. The big fat poll today is All-Star related. What would you do to fix the All-Star game? What would you do for that? We'd love to get that text. Anything else you want to talk about, Texas basketball, Texas football, any of that, you send that text in. We'll get to it. Starting off on the text line, Chan says, think bringing in Chris J with 2 minutes left was too late. I love the fact that Tyrese was cutting into the basketball. Yeah, I mean, and then also he says, last year we had stalwarts, Timmy, Dylan, Rice, Marcus, who helped with buckets. We don't have the same number of players such as season. And Serge Ibaka Rice was a transfer. Like, he was a new guy that came in but fit that vibe of what they were trying to do very well, and established and had leadership on the court. And guys who are going to push the ball on the court. And where they were looking for that this season, when those guys are not producing, it's two-edged sword, right? That if Max Abmas and Tyrese Hunter are not producing offensively, and if Max Abmas is not producing offensively, then he's not producing defensively, he's not producing rebounding, then at a certain point, it's hard for him to be a leader. Because now you're like, well, he's putting up 15 shots, he's hit 2, I'm not shooting, but I have to cover for him when his guy gets blown past. I think that there's a point where you could say, that, it's just hard to have that leadership. Dylan Nassau is probably trying to do his best, but it's hard to do. They need to get some more of those guys. I think, that's kind of what the plan may be more of next year, is to bring in a couple more younger guys. They do have some really good young guys coming in. Rely on Chris Johnson, rely on the young guys that are the freshmen that will be coming in next year, and start to try and rebuild a Rodney Terry culture that was kind of, it took Texas years before to get to where they were, and I think they need to reset a little bit more. They thought they could pull one more year out of it with the guys they brought in. IT Horton has been a disappointment. Max Abmas has not been the guy that we thought he could be, and you just realized that you weren't able to bring in enough. Kendall Weaver was definitely a massive home run because you were thinking that he may be able to help a little bit, and he has turned into a really good player. But they just, roster management just struck out more than you could do to be a top 20 team this year. So they just need to try and get together and get a big win tonight. Ardub says, can Vic Schaefer coach the men's team? No. And I'll tell you this, I don't know if there's a women's coach. The way you're allowed to coach women's basketball versus the way you coach men's in today's game, because there's way more options for the best men's players to go to, you can't coach the same way. If men's coaches yelled as much as women's coaches do at their players and broke them down the way that women's coaches are allowed to do, because there's like 10 teams. Reality, if you want to compete to be a top player, there's about 10 to 15 women's basketball teams in college basketball where you can really take a shot to win something big, and Texas is one of them. But there's not enough programs where in college basketball you can go to a lot of different places and compete, so it's much harder to keep players. If Vic Schaefer coached the men's team, we would have no recruits and no players in 2 years. Like, it would be, and they'd be okay. He'd still make an okay team, but it would not. I don't know if it would work out in the way. I think the men's team would. They would not necessarily want to take the abuse that they would be getting. That has changed very much. The transfer portal has changed the way you coach, and that's why a lot of those older coaches are getting out of the game now. Is because it's just harder to keep your players, and that's in every sport. It just is. And Texas says, get rid of the slam dunk competition. At this point, it's a complete joke. I don't think it's a complete joke. I do have a suggestion for that as well. And just getting rid of things, we can't say that's a solution, because there's sponsorable elements, there's money involved in that, and the NBA is not getting rid of anything. They need to fix things. But the slam dunk contest, the problem with the slam dunk contest was they kept overrating Jaylen Brown. But we'll talk about that more in the 5. But there was decent dunks. That first Mac McClung dunk was awesome. But there's other issues with that I think the guys now get a bad rep for that isn't necessarily fully on them. Let's see. Even though the reason the Cowboys lost to Green Bay was due to the poor showing out of Dan Quinn's defense and not Dak Prescott, do you believe he's the reason why they cannot reach the next level? What do the Cowboys need to do besides Jerry Jones stepping aside? I mean, Jerry Jones stepping aside I don't think that's entirely it. I think that makes everything easier, because then we don't have to guess that Jerry Jones is going to do the right thing. and make it work. I don't think they're as far away, but I think that the culture of we'll get them next time is too much there, that it is a very friendly, like positive environment. And I think you do need to put some more, a little bit more fire and intensity and in urgency. I don't know if there's an urgency involved in that Cowboys team. And we can get more to that, but that's, there's accountability and urgency. And I don't know if the Cowboys always have that on either side of the ball, but I don't think Dak is the one. And I mean, yes, if you get Patrick Mahomes, yeah, great. It changes a lot of things, but I don't know what quarterback you're getting that's necessarily going to be all of a sudden change everything in that locker room. We'll get to this one too before we hit the break. Locksmith Ryan says, I remember when Bucky told Chris Beard during an interview that this town doesn't care about basketball. It seems like it's true because all other sports are doing better than the basketball team. There's two things on this. When people say this town or this doesn't care about basketball, they're saying I don't care and I live in this town. The normal sense, I get texted, someone says no one cares about this, and I'll get 5 texts that say they do. It just is what it is. People will always say that if you don't care, that no one else does, because me and my group of friends don't care. So why should anybody else? The Moody Center was selling tickets. People will care about basketball, not to the same level as football. No, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think in college basketball, you can't necessarily keep the team at a high level year after year after year. It's very hard to do, and certain programs have a better chance of doing it because they have historic arc. Texas doesn't have history in winning in basketball, so it's not a blue blood basketball school. So you have to rebuild your team, and that's always been the case at Texas. Is you get high. They got to an Elite Eight last year, and normally when they get to Elite Eight, they don't necessarily stretch that out for a long run. So the expectations have to be different. You can't expect, well, we just be good every year because there's so many players. You go, well, if we say the average best player in college basketball will stay under one or stay one season or under, or not under 2 seasons, let's say under 2, the average. So a couple guys may stay 2, but most guys are going to stay for 1. And then you can try and add on other pieces like a Dylan Dessou, who's going to play a few more years and can be really great as last season. You were hoping Tyrese Hunter, when he transferred in from Iowa State, would be that kind of thing. And then you want to add pieces in the transfer portal. But in the transfer portal, guys like Hunter Dickinson will not come to Texas because they'd rather go to a Kansas where there is going to be more money in the transfer portal for basketball there. And they're going to be able to, offer him a position of this is Kansas basketball. It means something more than Texas basketball means to everybody who doesn't live in Texas. It's just what it is. So you have to look at the expectations of it, where Texas can compete for sure. But like saying that Houston cares more about Houston basketball than they care about the Rockets, or more than about football, that's crazy too. Houston, isn't necessarily the biggest basketball city for college basketball either, and they're doing just fine. I think you just have to build a little differently. The problem is Texas cares too much about winning and not about watching. And so people will go to games, but instead of caring about what the actual world of college basketball is, they assume you can win every single year. And that's just really, really hard to do, especially when you're not a blue blood school. It just becomes harder and harder to do. I mean, even look at Kentucky's now. They have issues, and North Carolina has issues, and they can't be up every year. And Duke has issues and can't be up every year. And they're expecting Texas to do it without that tradition and without the players recruiting. Now, KD's helping, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. I think people do care more, and Austin isn't the city that we all grew up in, that, it was much more centered about one thing. There's way more transplants, and they're going to care about other things too. That's why the Spurs are trying to get stuff done here and get more to be more of a Spurs team. That's why they're coming in a few weeks to come play in Austin. They want to make that. They want to make Austin a Spurs town as well. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get into more of your text messages, 512-447-3776. Talk about the All-Star game and All-Star weekend, and a little bit about Micah Parsons and his name being thrown around today, sometimes not in the nicest way, and what you guys think about that. We'll get into that in the 5 o'clock here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex on the Horn. Hour 2, we'll get into NBA All-Star Weekend, talk a little bit about Micah Parsons, who is at NBA All-Star Weekend. We've already talked a little Texas basketball. We've talked a little Texas baseball, a little Texas women's basketball, we should say. Maybe they get top billing at this point, being number 5 in the country, having a good weekend. We can talk all that. If you guys want to keep talking that, text line's open, 512-447-3776 if you guys want to jump on there and keep the conversation going. And, of course, a big fat poll today. What would you do to fix the NBA All-Star Game? Send that text in, and we will get with that. I look, and I'll start off with the text that I just saw it come in. We'll get to that, and then we'll start talking some All-Star Weekend and get back to the text line here in a minute. But I do want to address this because I did mention this about someone texted in the women's team, maybe Vic Schaefer should coach the men's team. I told you it's just hard because everyone will transfer out if you teach that way. We had a text that said more boys need to be coached like the women's team. They might actually learn something. And I agree they may learn something. There's a reason why that coaching is not done anymore at a high level in any male sport. Why it's harder and harder to do is because there's a right way to do it, and there's a way to do it that is bordering on the line of, okay, this is too much. There's a way to do that. And some of the coaches today that still in men's game do that, and they have to pull it back a little bit, but they still go hard at their team. But they can't go as full force as women's teams do. But in men's, they do hard. The reality is, if you start to allow again and you cut away the transfer portal and you put people in those bad situations, there is way too many counts of this being done poorly. And the reality of what happened is way too many men's coaches would come out and became worse and worse about it. And it became a deal of there was way too much trying to ruin kids' lives because that was a way that you felt you were able to hold over their head. Well, I'm not going to play you. I'm going to bench you. I will talk bad about you. I'll do all this. And so there's a right way and a wrong way to do it of beating players down and telling them that they're no good. And there's ways you can do it where you build them back up in other ways. Vic Schaefer does a lot off of practice to help build his team back up for the things that he does to try and get them to understand why he needs perfection on the court. That's really hard to do. And a lot of people don't do that other part. And that's why it's gone away from that, is because there was too many bad guys doing it and giving it a terrible name and doing it poorly. And it ends up making it to where it's just a unsustainable way of basketball, because when you see those stories, everyone's going to get a bad name when you say, well, this guy, when the stories come out about players, about coaches, physically abusing players, which, that's happened in women's basketball. A story of that comes out once a year, basically. And there's there's too much of that. There's places of withholding living conditions and food and stuff like that comes out of it. People trying to take away scholarships, people threatening to end careers. All of those things happen to try and get people to listen. And so there's a line in between it. I think there are coaches that do go hard at their players in the men's game. But it's just a different world. I've seen the practices on both sides, and coaches get into guys on the men's team. It's not quite the same. It's just not quite the same. And also, there's a different relationship with some of these men. If you're 19 years old and someone talks to you the way that, I've seen women's coaches talk to men, they get into fights, and players would get into fights because it's downright disrespectful at times. But it's just a different relationship, and it's harder to have in that male-male relationship. It's harder to have a lot of times. Just is what it is. So I agree that there is points of you do need tough love at points, and I think really good coaches continue to do that. But you have to have that line, and that got crossed way too many times in the men's game, and that's why you got to see more player empowerment, because you're basically making up for all the bad coaches who are trying to make it work, and they cost everyone else, the good coaches, because they couldn't handle it. It's a reality of what happened, and that's why you're at in 2024. You can't get away with things because the bad coaches ruined it. And that's a lot of ways in life, and it just sucks. What didn't suck was all of All-Star Weekend. What a bad transition. Of all of All-Star Weekend, we do get the Friday night. We do get the celebrity game. We saw the LED court for the first time. It was pretty interesting to see where they were moving the three-point line at points, and they could add in little spots to make your points go up. They did On Fire, and the guys who were on fire were able to, they had the flames leading through them, and their points were doubled. I thought that was a cool, fun way to do it for a celebrity game. The celebrity games are normally pretty bad. It made it a little bit more fun and watchable. We also saw C.J. Stroud and Micah Parsons in the game. Micah Parsons wins the MVP of the celebrity game, just going down and playing bully ball like he can do. CJ Stroud went over, and I love the conversation with him and Stephen A. Smith, where CJ Stroud comes over and he's shooting the ball, and Stephen A. Smith goes, man, you just got to use your size and get inside. He goes, but I'm a shooter. And he goes, yeah. The shot ain't falling, man. Shot ain't falling. Micah Parsons, he basically just keeps going inside. The game wasn't great. It was interesting to see the court, though, with the LEDs on it and having everything be able to move around. That was interesting to see. And then, Stephen A. Smith and Strandon Sharp also make it somewhat entertaining there. No, but it's a celebrity game at 6 o'clock on a Friday, so it's not a big deal in there. Then we have the Rising Stars games. It was Team Jalen ends up beating Team Detlef. Benedict Mathurin wins the MVP. It was okay. Some of the teams didn't try as hard. You saw certain players trying to be too cool for school, and then certain players trying to take it more seriously. Wimby and his team, Powell, actually lose in the semifinal to the G League team because G League team wanted to make a name for themselves and came out there trying to earn a spot, trying to earn the prize money. They get the win, but Team Jalen beats them, Team Detlef, in the finals to get the win there. We had the skills challenge, which is pretty good. Anthony Edwards tries to say, he said earlier in the week that he was going to shoot left-handed all weekend. He, in the first round, throws up 3 bricks with his left hand in the skills challenge and immediately got away from that. But Team All-Star did pretty well. The Team Pacers gets the win, though. Texas X, Miles Turner, a part of that team with Benedict Mathurin and Tyrese Halliburton. They get the win in the Kia Skills Challenge. In the three-point contest, Dame Lillard gets the win there. I do have the issue in the three-point contest. 4 guys tied. They can only take 3 in the next round. It's an all-star game. We're having fun, right? Why not put all 4 in? Who would have been upset about the 4th person being in? Was your time so time-sensitive that you couldn't have put another matchup in there? I don't get why. And they had to do a tiebreaker, which then took more time than if you would have just had all 4 go advance the next round, and we could have had a better tournament. I just didn't get why we had to do the tiebreaker instead of just allowing all 4 to move on. I would have let all 4 move on. I think it would have been more fun that way. That's just me. Dame Lillard, though, does get the win in the three-point shootout. Did show all weekend that he can still hit that 3 at a very high level. We get to the slam dunk contest. Slam dunk contest was okay in the first round. Mac McClung had some good dunks. And then Jaylen Brown, and credit. I will give credit to Jaylen Brown because he was in the event. Because he said stars need to get back into it, and I'm going to put my name in to be stars. But you could tell that Adam Silver made a big point to tell all the judges, we want stars back in this. So whatever you think the number is, give him like a point higher. And he made it to the finals and did not deserve to. He did not have anything great. He was the worst of the 4 dunkers. So he shouldn't have been in the finals. But I'll also say this. In the NBA Day Slam Dunk Contest, people will still say that early on with Spud Webb and Dominique Wilkins and that stuff, that was great, and it's not great now. Jaylen Brown's dunks were better than any of those dunks back in the day. Spud Webb didn't do anything cool or big. Those dunks back in the day weren't great either. It was just you weren't expecting Vince Carter dunks. Once Vince Carter did, the reason the Slam Dunk Contest is down is because no one can beat 4 guys' dunks. Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon, and Vince Carter broke the Slam Dunk Contest, and now no one can beat it, and they're all trying to do different dunks. When just go back and do the regulars really well and do them with flair and add a little panache to the originals. And they have plenty of guys who can do that, but they don't. They keep trying to make original dunks, and there's only so many things to do. It's like when a band is trying to sound different from everything else, and they just want to sound so different that they end up sounding like crap because they're taking away every element that we wanted to see. You can make the Slam Dunk Contest better again by just making it going back to basics and just having really, like, dunking from the free throw line. There's probably 20 to 30 guys in the NBA who could do it. But if you just dunk from the free throw line now, it's not a 50 anymore because they want to see you do something when you're dunking. But at the time when Jordan did it, that was the greatest thing anybody ever saw. It's just the expectations have elevated further than the event. And, life is about managing expectations. So you have to lower the expectations of the Slam Dunk Contest to make it matter better. There's nothing they can do to fix it because the only way to fix it is, we invented we lower the amount of gravity in the stadium now so you can jump higher. That's like the only way to fix it. And I don't think a lot of people are going to fix it. I don't think that's going to happen. So I don't have that issue. The Slam Dunk Contest is what it is. Lower your expectations on it and let guys do some more old school dunks, and we'll all have a much funner time and we'll try and get stars back in it. You'd love to see a Zion get into it. You'd love to see Ja Morant be healthy and get into it. You'd love to see those guys go and take a shot at it. I'll give hats off to Jaylen Brown for coming in and trying. Didn't necessarily get the job done. So Mac McClung gets another win there. But then we get to the main event. We get to the All-Star game, and that's also part of the problem is that it is the main event of a weekend that, you get to Sunday, everybody's been having a good time all weekend long, and they're ready to see the best players in the world play. You look at that Western Conference All-Star team, and you think, man, this is one of the best groups of talent ever put together. You look at what that team can do, and you look at what the All-Star what the Western All-Star team look like, and you look at the East, and you go, that's a really good group of players too. Joel Embiid was there, man, it'd be even better. They end up winning. The East does 211 to 186. It's a lot of points. Karl Anthony Towns puts up 50 points. Damian Lillard puts up 39, wins the MVP. There was 289 shots in the game. They shot 168 threes. Now I saw Bill Simmons come out today, and Bill Simmons' idea to help fix the All-Star game is take away the three-point line. Take away the three-point line. They shot 168 threes in the game out of 289 shots. 168 of them were threes. People are just jacking up shots from half court. It's not that entertaining to watch guys throw up shots from half court and miss. It's fun when they hit them, but when they miss them, it's not really much fun. So they're just shooting threes because they're non-contact. They don't have to do as much. It's easier shot. I get it. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I think that it's harder to do because you're stepping backwards. When you do that, you're taking a step backwards, not forwards. And for the players, for the fans, for everybody else, the three-point line is such a big part of today's game that when you go to the All-Star game and you take it away, now it's going to be a dunk fest all game. But is that really much better if no one's playing rim protection? Or do people really go, wow, man, we saw a lot of great 18-foot jumpers? I don't know if that necessarily fully fixes the issue, which the real issue is the players do not want to compete. The players do not care, and it does not help with the foreign players that are coming in now and do not care one bit. Luka Doncic, after the game, when they asked him about the game, said, well, no one tries on defense, so why should I try on offense? And boy, he didn't. Jokic didn't really want to care, didn't try. Giannis tried okay. He did the interview, which I don't know why they keep interviewing before these events. Like anything, optional, Giannis is going to have the response of, I'd rather be with my family. We know that, so why do we keep interviewing him and acting like he's going to be the spokesman for the league? But I keep seeing this where people want to make it an event where it's better and they want to add more competition. And they keep trying to find ways to add more competition. So I'll throw my hat in of what I think you could do to the All-Star game, what my solution is, or at least an idea to move the solution up. If you watch the Rising Stars on Saturday or Friday, you watch the Rising Stars, you saw that Team Powell lost to the G League players. Why? Because the G League players were going to go out there and try a little bit. They were trying to steal the ball. Now, they weren't playing top level stuff, but they were playing. And enough guys on the Rising Stars thought, we don't have to play them. We'll just win and we'll just do whatever. And we'll be able to come back in the end. And they couldn't come back in the end. And it got a little bit more competitive at the end, but a lot of guys were still too cool for school and didn't want to do it. But I think that's your key, is you have to level up the level of players and you have to change the playing field a little bit. You have to look at the Rising Stars and say, okay, right now we have the All-Stars playing the All-Stars. And all those guys, they're just as good friends with the guys on the other team as they are with the guys on their own team. There's no real loyalty east to west. There's no loyalty of the teams you get picked on. But if you now say, we're going to put the same kind of format we did for Rising Stars, which was 4 teams, each play a matchup to 40. I'd make it 50 for the All-Stars, but each to 40 is what they did in the Rising Stars, and then a finals, the 2 teams that win. And I would make the first game, it doesn't matter, you can change up which order, but the first game is Western Conference All-Stars versus the Eastern Conference Rising Stars. And then the next game is the Eastern Conference All-Stars versus the Western Conference Rising Stars. And go put out there and put the players out there in a matchup where they're going to have to either play basketball or get beat by guys that they don't want to get beat by. And I know you're still risking that a lot of these guys do not care at all. And you put enough team on the bench that you can bench them. And if Luka doesn't want to play, fine. Luka doesn't play. He doesn't get to be an all-star. You say, okay, you lose that ability. You don't play. We're going to take that away. You got voted an all-star. You're not going to play. We don't care. You don't want to be a part of the NBA. You don't want that. Cool. We're going to take away as much as we can and financially try and burden you for not caring about helping the NBA. Because that's all that's going to matter. And you can't do too much, but you can try and take it away, not let him be on TV, let his shoe sponsorship get pissed off at him because he wasn't on the court. And you say, why? Because I didn't care. You know, we're going to debut these shoes, but now no one cares because you were on the bench the whole time in your sweats. So you try and do that, and you go put them out there. And I know. And then how do you make the rising stars? Same way you made G League. You give a money prize. And money prizes to the rising stars, they're going to care. Because that, whatever, $1 million or $2 million, whatever you can get from your sponsor to get that money to give, to spread out to the rising stars, well, that's real money to them because they're all on rookie contracts. So even though they have sponsorships and they have their stuff, that's real money to a 22-year-old kid. There's some real money involved in that maybe the 35-year-old or maybe 32-year-old, whatever, is not going to care about the same way. So you make it, and you put those in there, and you try to get a real matchup out of them. And then if you do get East versus West, then they're going to play a shorter game against each other. You try and put together that fourth quarter matchup that you have that used to be in the games where everybody thinks, man, these games were super competitive 5 years ago. And when Kobe was playing, those games were competitive. The games weren't competitive when Kobe played. The fourth quarters were competitive. And I think the fourth quarter could have been competitive in this game. Could have been competitive if the game wasn't out of hand by the time that it got there. Then maybe it would have been competitive in the fourth quarter. But I think that you could add into some pressure of the matchup by making these younger players get out. And also, when you do that, when you talk about the rest of the league and people caring about the game, the reality is there's 18 teams represented by the All-Stars. 18. That leaves 12 teams that did not have anybody they cared about in that game. There was not a person that we had a representative, nobody that we could care about in that game. Well, now the Rising Stars, they have 14 teams that were involved in that, 9 more that were not involved in the All-Stars. There was 27 teams if you combine those two rosters right now. Brooklyn, Chicago, and Memphis did not have teams represented. And at the end of the day, you can find for those 3. But then you make it, all 30 teams are represented. You're representing your people. So you add all those in, I think you can get them to start caring a little bit more when they see these young guys that shouldn't be beating them, that are coming down and playing hard against them. And when you get those young guys and you put money in and they start playing defense, do the Western Conference All-Stars start caring when they're about to get beat up by the Rising Stars, by guys in their rookie and sophomore season? Do they maybe have a little bit more pride you get out of them if you do that? I don't know. But I think it's worth a shot. It's worth, instead of hoping that eventually they'll care one day playing against each other. No, don't let their friends play against them. Put them against the guys that aren't their friends because they're rookies and sophomores. They're their subordinates. They're people that are below them. And make them play against guys that are below them and give the guys below them a chance to go out there and prove that they will give it a game. That's what I would do. And speaking of adding teams, what I would do, help out the slam dunk contest, I would have one person from every single team in the NBA submit a dunk or two and let people vote online who's going to be in the slam dunk contest. Best dunks in the prelims get put in so we don't necessarily get a bad matchup of guys that can't really do great dunks. You get, the best dunkers in there. So you have to pick, and whoever you're picking from each team. If there's someone on your team who doesn't want to do it, then you can't put them. But maybe you get a little better shot to get somebody in there if you pick all 30 teams. I'm just trying to involve everybody in these rounds. I think it could be a good move. That's what I would do if I was commissioner. I know Adam Silver's looking. That's what I would do. I would try and involve the Rising Stars. I would involve the young guys and try and pull the punt card of the All-Stars when they're down by 15 points to the young guys because they thought they could walk in and do it. Can you pull their punt card? Do they have enough pride to go after that? I don't know. Maybe they don't have any pride anymore. Maybe it's so stupid to them that you just have to throw it all out. I don't know if you want to try the baseball thing and make it the home court advantage. I know you don't want to do that, but so you got to do something because, man, they just keep getting worse and worse. But that's my idea. What do you think? Text line's open, 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line. We'll take a break. Come back, get to the text line. Got some sound for you about Micah Parsons and the sound. We'll maybe play that Bart Scott sound too, and we'll keep talking about Micah and his story of today Is he soft or not? We'll get to that when we come back on the other side here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex on a Monday afternoon. Talk some All-Star. We've talked some Texas baseball. We've talked some Texas basketball, some Big 12 basketball. Moving right along. I want to talk about a story that has come out today, a story that's been around the Cowboys a little bit about Micah Parsons. And that Micah Parsons has been getting a little bit of grief, that he is somebody that is a big piece for the Cowboys' success. And he has been talked about a lot with their failure for success, especially in this year's playoff, and the defense not showing up. There's been a lot of talk about it today. They talked about it this morning. Listen to that. We'll talk about it here on the show too. But I want to play the Hook 'em Up replay. We'll get their opinion, and then we'll come back and give you ours. When we play a little Hook 'em Up replay here, talking about Micah Parsons, and you got to talk about the Cowboys. It's the offseason. It's what Jerry wants. So we're going to talk about it. It's a Hook 'em Up replay here on the Sports Complex.
All right, so Micah Parsons over the All-Star weekend, he got a chance to sit down with Stephen A. Smith. I'm assuming because Stephen A. Smith was coaching him in the Celebrity All-Star Game, which, by the way, Micah won MVP, had 37 points in that All-Star Game. Actually ended up with 16 rebounds and 4 steals. Won the MVP, had a really good game. Also sat down with Stephen A. Smith, too. Had a number of different topics that they discussed. One of the clips, it's a little lengthy, but it's pretty good. He talks about his relationship with Jerry Jones and how, and whether you like this or not, Cowboys fans, how close they are. And Jerry Jones, the general manager, Jerry Jones, that he also is open to the suggestions from Micah Parsons about how to build and how to construct the roster on the defensive side of the ball. It's a little lengthy, but it's some good meat here on this bone. So here's Micah Parsons talking to Stephen A. Smith about his relationship with the owner/GM of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones.
You brought up how you want to be a part of the culture in terms of picking the kind of players that y'all need. Is that something that you mentioned to Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, like, yo, let me see, let me play a role in who are we bringing on this squad mentally? Do you approach them about stuff like that?
Yeah. So that's what I like about Jay, and which I was dope. I think Jay's one of the best GM owners that I've been around, and not even just I've been around because I've only been on one team, but from what I've heard from other NBA and NFL players. And it's just like this, the Super Bowl, Jerry sees me walking out the win. Jerry was at the win. He says, "Hey, you going to the Super Bowl?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going." He said, come see us. And I was like, "Hey, you got any extra tickets? I got some homeboys that want to come." Jerry sends me 4 extra tickets to the Super Bowl suite. And we just sit and talk from before the game until the whole half about players I want to bring in, players I want to be around, who do I need, who do I want to be with, future of our team. And that's just dope to have that type of feedback with an owner that, loves to hear your ideas and what you think and where the team can be. And, Jerry's been, pretty amazing about that with my family and stuff like that. So I've had them conversations with him, and we spoke for 2-3 hours just in the Super Bowl alone.
When you told him what you thought the team needed, what did you say? I'm not asking for names. I'm talking about what you alluded to when it comes to culture, personality, etc. What specifically were your words to Jerry about what the Dallas Cowboys are missing and what they need?
So I told Jerry, I said, look at every team that kind of was in that Final Four. Who do they have?
That's Kansas City, San Francisco, Detroit.
Okay. Who did Baltimore have? A great linebacker core, right? Who did San Fran have? Great linebacker core. KC, Bolton, and they came along. I said, we need to get another bigger linebacker who's going to come down and I said, we need to get a super 330 nasty interior. Look how Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave caused havoc in, the last 2 games. Look at, how Aleem McNeil, Detroit, and they front with Hutchinson and all them. It's just certain things where I was pinpointing we can build in this because we're slim. Like, we have guys, and I think Osa's been great for us, and, but we just need a big old 330, can't move. Because I saw the way Chris Jones affected that Super Bowl, and I was like, my God. Like,
need a big boy. Get fast and clogging up the line of scrimmage, making things happen, right?
And not even just Chris Jones, Mike Pennell.
Oh, yeah.
like, you know, I think we got a lot of rushers. I think Osa, he could play inside, outside, one of the most versatile DTs. And you know, when we lost Hank, he's a big dude. But we need to get one of them big old nasty pass rushing, get going.
Marcus Lawrence. Okay, so that's interesting because what he talks about there is a big old nasty nose tackle that can be stout at the point of attack. They just drafted Mazi Smith, who is essentially was supposed to be that. Now, Dan Quinn's vision, I think, was different. I think they wanted him to lose some weight so they can play him in multiple shades up front. But he was supposed to be just a old school nose tackle. And they I don't know, they put him on a diet and he lost weight, or just he just never developed into that. He hadn't developed into it yet. All right, so that's strange that he wants a big old school nose tackle. That's what they drafted in the first round in Mazi Smith. And he wants a thumping linebacker to help him, to be kind of a complement to him at that off-ball linebacker spot when they put him there. I think most of that is due to, you know, Leighton Vander Esch is a run stuffer, especially in Dan Quinn's system. He was really successful. Remember, they brought in a Jonathan Hankins to help them be kind of the run stuff and D tackle. All the pieces that he's describing, the Cowboys have actually went out of their way to target those types of players. Now, DeMarvion Overshown, not a run-stuffing linebacker. He's more of a hybrid linebacker that's a pass first in terms of his skill set, right? He can defend the pass first. They can teach him to be a run-stuffing linebacker, but that's what the Cowboys were missing, so he's not wrong. It's just interesting that they drafted Mazi Smith, and it seems like, you know, he's not happy with Mazi Smith, or he doesn't see Mazi Smith developing into that. I wouldn't doubt if that Mike Zimmer system coming in, though, that he does target a player like a T'Vondre Sweat in the second round. Going after a D tackle again in the first round, that seems a little bit ill-advised, considering, you know, you got to give Mazi Smith some time to work out. But I wouldn't doubt the Cowboys went for an old school nasty nose tackle like that. T'Vondre Sweat's probably the best example in the draft right now of one of those players he's describing. That's just big enough, has enough mass to take up multiple gaps on the front, on the defensive line, and can demand a double team, and can switch up from being a forced run defender to being an elite pressure defender if he reaches his ceiling. And maybe the Cowboys need to start stockpiling multiple players like that, and maybe in Zimmer's system, and he's going to run more of a old school over front. Maybe that's exactly what the Cowboys need. And honestly, it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Zimmer does with Micah Parsons, because Dan Quinn's system was perfect for weaponizing Micah Parsons because he was a hybrid and he would move him around that very multiple defense that was malleable. There's much less malleability and much less multiplicity within Zimmer's defense. And those are kind of athletes that they have right now. So it's just interesting that he brings it up. The truth is, Micah Parsons doesn't want to be a forced run defender. He's got all the elite skills to be a elite run defender, as well as an elite, elite pressure defender as well. But he doesn't value being a run defender, and that's why teams, to really adjust to the Cowboys, the simple adjustment is become a power running team, like what Green Bay did, like what San Fran is, because they cannot, you basically turn Michael Parsons, their best defensive player, into a liability. He becomes a weakness because he's not a good run defender, even though he could be an elite run defender, because there's nothing stopping him from being an elite run defender except for him. And that's what I think ultimately this should be about him looking at in the man in the mirror moment and looking at his own skill set and seeing how he needs to evolve his skill set. He's an elite pass rusher, but he's a mediocre to average to below average run defender.
Yeah, and he told Dan Quinn, or he said he was going to be a pass rusher, and Dan Quinn's like, no, you're still going to be the weapon.
Yeah.
And you can tell that's kind of what he wants his role to be. But again, I said this earlier, but when he's kind of calling out his own team, he kind of called out his own GM, because you're right, they just drafted Mazi Smith.
They just drafted him.
Who's 6'3", 330, exactly what he said. He's on your team right now.
Trash.
I wish that answer would have started with, look, I need to play a lot better. I need to bring it more. I need to be a better leader. All those things, instead of starting to talk about what they don't have, because whether you're meaning to or not, you're down talking your own players, your own teammates, because we need better linebackers. Well, you have linebackers on your team, so you're saying they're not any good. You have Mozzie Smith and Hankins he talked about, and you have O.C. Digizua. So I'm sure those guys here that aren't appreciative of. Come on, man. We had a top 5 defense this year. We had a top 3 defense this year. We didn't play good in one game. They do need a run stuffer. I don't disagree. I think Micah talks too much. I just think Micah's out there talking too much.
He does talk a lot. Yeah, but that's the culture of Jerry Jones, though.
Yes.
Jerry Jones likes talkers.
I know. Well, and then the idea of him sitting in the booth with Jerry talking during the Super Bowl, that's fine. Let's hope Jerry's listening to his football people more than Micah Parsons. I think we can all see they need to stop the run better. So how do you address that? But to your point, I mean, they did draft Mozzie Smith. They drafted DeMarvion Overshown last year, another guy that they didn't get anything from because he was hurt. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a challenge for them right now. But Micah Parsons, coming up, Rod. We're going to hear apparently Bart Scott. The always opinion Bart Scott was on the the Get Up show this morning on First Take or ESPN, whatever it is, and he was he's not a big fan of Micah Parsons. Apparently, we'll get to that coming up
because he talks a lot.
He talks a lot.
It's all about the mouthpiece. He talks a lot. Yeah,
podcasts and remember during the season when Micah was talking about goes on his podcast talking about why do they get criticized so much? Man, just shut up and play.
Yeah,
just shut up and play.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about other players when in the biggest game of the year against the Packers you had a tackle and a half. Yeah. And had zero impact on the game.
He did not have an impact because they ran the ball.
Yeah.
The way you make him an impactless player is to make him a run defender.
Well, then that's what I need to be better against the run, Stephen A. I need to make sure from the point of attack I'm doing my job to stop the run, and then we need X, Y, and Z. I get that. But, yes, I mean, in a game where you guys gave up 48 points on your home field against the 7 seed, and you had no impact on the game, don't sit here and talk about Chris Jones. Yeah, he has impact on every big damn game.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he's a game record.
Wait a minute. Did you just say shut up and dribble? Is that what you just said?
No, shut up and what do you mean?
Well, he's talking about how Micah does talk a lot. He does. Micah talks a lot, and it's good for him and it's good for the brand. The Cowboys don't mind it at all. But there are times where you could argue that he's not always backing it up. You know what I mean? And that Green Bay game, that's a prime example of it.
Yeah, it is. It's that walking the fine line. Good stuff there from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rod B. Walking the fine line of shut up and play and not being the guy to say shut up and play. You can talk, but you can't not produce and then say, well, it's not my fault I didn't produce. That's really the bigger issue with Micah Parsons right now is that he wants to blame other people. He wants to say that he has all the fixes, but all the fixes seem to be revolving around him doing what he wants to do. And if they make him that, but you do have to make him a better player. We'll see. Maybe he was falling out of love with Dan Quinn at the end. Maybe Mike Zimmer will be able to bring some good things to him. All right, let's take our last break. We'll come back. We'll keep talking about Micah Parsons and whatever else you want to talk about on the text line. 512-447-3776 is the text line. We will get to wrap up the text line, wrap up Micah Parsons, wrap up everything here. We come back and hit the end of the show here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 101.9 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right, wrapping things up here on the Sports Complex on a Monday afternoon. Appreciate you guys hanging with me. Get to the end of the text line here before we get out of here. Someone thought up they should use ankle weights in the slam dunk contest. I think that might hurt us. I said we got to go 0G before. We do need to get Mac McClung a sponsorship with those moon shoes. And I don't know if they still make them or the ones that Jimmy sells in Seinfeld that makes Jimmy jump high. Jimmy's got to love them. Those shoes. Yeah, that is what that's what we need. Mac McClung needs to get that sponsorship immediately for How's Jumps. And then Nate says, there's only one way to make it better. Strippers, which I don't know if you want them Indiana strippers, Nate. I don't know if that's what you're going for. It may be backfire on you. And he'll say, remember when Mozzie says he doesn't even like football, he just likes hitting people? That's not the right attitude. No, the right attitude. The attitude on the Cowboys seems to be like 12 different types of attitude, and none of them seem to be necessarily the right one. Jerry wants to be friends with everybody. We talked about that. It's hard to make everybody your friend and have a culture where everyone's competitive enough that they want to do anything to win and anyone needs to be the best. It's hard to do that, and I don't know if they've found that way yet. Micah Parsons, at some point you're going to have to tell him that he's not the smartest guy in the room. He's really, really good, but you're not the best and you're not the smartest. And if you want to be, you may have to work a little bit harder and try and expand your skill set. He's really good, but he's not the best. And so stop pretending or stop acting like you're the best because you're not. So you have to fix those. That's the problem with him right now is he talks a lot like he is, but that's like Draymond. He's just way better than Draymond. And that's why he's going to get people that are always going to be hating on him. All right. We're going to get out of here, but rooting for Texas tonight. Needs a big win over Kansas State. Chan, I love it. Hook 'em tonight. Yeah. Big win tonight, hopefully, for over Kansas State. Get a big win. Get back on the right track. Get Max Abmas to hit some points so we can get going forward again. Dylan DeSue needs a big game tonight. I see it coming. Get some hope. Get some hope going into Big 12. Show us that you still got some fight. I just want to see his team fight at the end of the season. It could get real. It could get real ugly. I don't want to see that. I want to see him show some fight tonight. Hopefully, that's what we'll see. We'll get into that. We'll get into the big Iowa State-Houston matchup as well tomorrow. More into some football talk tomorrow. We want a lot of basketball heavy today. We'll get into some football tomorrow too. But until then, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean. We'll see you right back here tomorrow for more The Sports Complex.